Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share my colleagues' concerns about the rapid collapse of the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces and the Afghan government and the failure of our intelligence. We need some answers. After investing 2 decades, nearly $2 trillion, and most importantly, the lives of almost 2,500 of American troops, our nation must conduct a thorough and honest review of the United States government's involvement in Afghanistan since the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. For the sake of current and future generations of warfighters, we must capture the hard lessons from Afghanistan to ensure that these lessons are not forgotten or worse, repeated on a future battlefield. This is our moral responsibility as a nation. Gentlemen, all 3 of you have been involved in the war in Afghanistan multiple times in multiple different capacities throughout your careers. Secretary Austin, was the situation on the ground in Afghanistan over the last few months influenced by previous decisions made over the course of several years?
I absolutely believe that, Senator. Foremost among those decisions is the Doha Agreement. I think that severely impacted the morale of the military.
Thank you. Secretary Austin, if that's the case, is it possible to have an intellectually honest lessons learned exercise that only looks at the most recent events in Afghanistan of the last couple of months, or must any effective review look at the whole 20 years since September 11th?
I think you have to look at the entire 20 years, Senator. I think there's some great lessons learned that we're going to take away once we do that. But yeah, I believe you got to look at the entire time span.
Thank you. I agree that an effective review must be comprehensive. After all, the war in Afghanistan was shaped by 4 different administrations and 11 different Congresses. No party should be looking to score cheap partisan political points off a multi-decade nation-building failure that was bipartisan in the making. Instead, Congress should authorize a long-term effort solely devoted to bringing accountability and transparency to the Afghanistan war and lessons to be learned. That is why on Thursday, I will be introducing the Afghanistan War Study Commission. My bill would establish a bipartisan independent commission to examine every aspect of the war, including the political and strategic decisions that transformed a focused military mission into vast nation-building campaign. Importantly, this commission must produce actionable recommendations designed to guide the development of real reforms, just as the 9/11 Commission's work informed congressional lawmaking efforts in the years after its publication. Secretary Austin, would you agree with me that such an independent, long-term study could serve as an effective complementary effort to the more targeted lessons learned reviews that DoD always conducts, particularly in shedding light on how Congress and civilian leaders from multiple government agencies can do a better job in defining the scope of military missions and actually enforcing legal limitations on the use of force?
I would, and the point that you're making, my view is it needs to be an interagency approach to this. So.
Thank you, and I do want to note that my family and I were in Cambodia until the very end. I'm an American. I was born in Thailand, but my father worked for the United Nations, and to answer my colleague's question, my father chose to stay as long as possible to help the Cambodian people as long as possible. And he left after American troops had left. The American ambassador stayed behind after American troops had left. And in fact, after the last military transport had left, I know this because my father was on the last military transport to leave Cambodia, and the ambassador had to travel overland. So yes, we do leave Americans behind, but this is all tied to NEO operations and how that is planned, which is why I think it is so important that we have an independent investigation. Maybe the failure here was that we didn't have a NEO plan in place and we didn't activate it before all of our troops left. But if that's the case, we need to learn that. So I would ask for my colleagues to consider this independent commission. We put somebody in charge of it who was not in a decision-making capacity during the 20 years. Make it nonpartisan, and let's get those lessons learned so we don't make these same mistakes over and over again. Our troops deserve better, and the families of the 2,500 American troops who laid down their lives to protect and defend this Constitution, who followed the lawful order of all of those presidents, they deserve better than partisan fights. We need to get some real answers. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I just wanted to say thank you. I just received a letter this morning in response to a letter I'd written to you and Secretary Blinken asking about the process of certifying that somebody did work for the DoD as a contractor. And I do want to say that a response is a good one. I think you've made, with regards to Project Rabbit, which I'll give you a couple minutes to talk about, but it seems that you've reviewed over 7,800 employment records and matched over 3,400 of those pre-com applicants. Would you like to talk about Operation Rabbit just a little bit?
Well, only to say that, I mentioned earlier, Senator, that this, when this question came up, that this is important to us. We think we have to do everything we can to shorten the amount of time that it takes for somebody who's worked with us before to be able to verify that they have worked with us. We're going to continue to work on this, and again, one of my major directorates is focused on this, and we'll work with the committee on this if you have further requirements. But thanks for your support in this regard. So.
Thank you, and I know each one of us probably does have folks who've contacted our office seeking help in verifying their employment as a contractor, not just under DoD, but also with state. I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about Mark Frerichs. Although military operations have ended, an Illinoisan and a veteran of the U.S. Navy, Mr. Mark Frerichs is still being held hostage in Afghanistan. He was abducted in Kabul on January 31st of last year, and while he's been held captive too long, recent reporting in Newsweek indicates Taliban willingness to engage on his release. Anas Haqqani, a senior Taliban official, confirmed that U.S. and Taliban negotiators have discussed my constituent and said about the prospect of a deal to secure Mr. Frerichs' freedom, quote, "There are attempts between the Political Bureau and the United States envoy, which we hope will be successful in this regard. We must continue to press for Mr. Frerichs' swift and safe return. This must be a top priority for our government." And in August, a Pentagon spokesperson stated the DoD is laser focused on returning him home safely to his family and where he belongs. And Secretary Austin, I know from our numerous conversations, including just yesterday about my constituents, that you have been personally involved in attempting to secure his return, both in your engagements with your counterparts in the region and in your role as a member of the Principals Committee of the National Security Council. Can you please update me on your discussions regarding Mr. Frerichs with your foreign counterparts, as well as your interagency partners in our government? And I know his family is probably watching this testimony today.
This is, as you have indicated, Senator, I want him back. And, we're going to continue to do everything we can to get him back. As you and I have talked in other sessions, I've engaged the chief of the Pakistani Army on multiple occasions to solicit his help. I've engaged other senior leadership, Qataris, for example, to use their influence to see if they can help us there. We'll remain focused on this. This is. I'm hopeful that we can see some daylight, some movement here in the future. I don't have anything to offer you in terms of specific readouts from the interagency process, and I defer to Mr. Sullivan to provide commentary there. So.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I appreciate your commitment to getting Mr. Frerichs home. I am, however, frustrated by how little information there has been made available to congressional staff and others when it comes to everyone who's trying to get allies out of Afghanistan. General Milley, I understand from public reporting that you've been working with some veterans groups and some other NGOs who have been voluntarily offering their help in the continued effort to evacuate Americans and at-risk Afghans from Afghanistan. Can you share any details with us and the public today about that effort?
Yeah, so what we did, Senator, is we did a little bit of outreach to some of the groups that are probably well known to folks in this room. Had them in for some sessions in the Defense Department to get coordinated so we could have a common operating picture of what SIVs, what P1, P2s, and what American citizens, most importantly, are still there, try to get the information in a singular database, et cetera, from the various groups. In addition to that, get them linked into Ambassador Bass, because he is the single focal point with the Department of State, which we've done that now. We have a joint staff general officer who's involved in that working group with them, and he's our liaison and brings them all together in order to get all the information, in order to develop courses of action to help bring out additional American citizens and others.
Thank you. Will you commit to communicating with me and all of Congress about this partnership, and so we can help facilitate the connections with these people who still remain at risk and are contacting us through our various offices?
I will. It is being run by the Department of State, but I will work with the Department of State to make sure that they get it over to you. Yes.
Thank you.